And there's a reason I've twice been elected by a 13-point margin in Westchester with the help of Democrats and independents. It's because I've governed in a bipartisan and inclusive manner, and we've delivered the bold reforms, progress, and results that we promised.
So just a couple more points to get to on Rob Astorino and his record in Westchester County as he makes his announcement that he's entering the gubernatorial race today. First of all, one of the big issues that we've covered, that I know you've had to deal with, that I know you've covered, is the housing desegregation suit that's been plaguing Westchester County. It was Andy Spano's doing, the last county executive who Astorino beat in 2009, but Astorino has fought this tooth and nail, taking on the Justice Department and taking on the Department of Housing and Urban Development as well. Is that a weapon, do you think, Madam Majority Leader, that Andrew Cuomo is going to be able to use against Rob Astorino?
Well, I think it's been a bad strategy, frankly, for Westchester County, and I'll tell you why. I think that whether or not you agree with all the terms of the housing settlement, and there's a lot to be unpacked there, the notion that you are always fighting all of the levels of government around you, always pointing fingers and saying this level of government is bad, that level of government is bad, ultimately winds up hurting your citizens. We have had some really serious implications as a result of the tact that the administration has decided to take on the fight, where the communities that need, for example, federal fundings, CDBG fundings the most, have been the ones that have suffered the most. And most of those communities are not even in that 31 housing settlement. So I think that's where I would say he's had a communication misstep. You know, we are almost in compliance with the housing settlement. We're very, very, very close. I think anybody else in any kind of business setting would say, if you're inches away, let's close that gap instead of continually making it a fight and standing up, shaking your fist. That doesn't seem like that's good for us. I think for many, I think in a bipartisan way, many people just want this to be in our history and don't want to continue going.
Phil, is that a fair assessment of where the county stands with the settlement and how Astorino's handled it?
Well, you know, I've watched this thing, and it's very complicated. A lot of people don't really understand it. Frankly, I don't really understand it all that much either.
So I'm not the only one that doesn't understand every detail of it.
But dumbed down and simplified, what he's doing with this is he's saying, do you trust Washington, D.C., or do you trust me?
Yeah.
And do you trust the HUD, you know, or do you trust what I'm telling you, you know, and it gets down to...
We do need affordable housing.
Right.
I mean, our business community says it. We're trying to attract keep our young people here. We're trying to let people age in place. It's a need that we've known we've had for a long time.
But the federal government has put down a set of criteria, agreed to by Spano as a campaign tactic, number one.
And also by the legislature, though, right? I mean,
and number two,
these things get
but
settled.
number two, the HUD and the federal government is trying to go beyond the agreement. And one of the things in the agreement, in your own town of Austin, in the village of Austin, they said that there's discriminatory zoning in the town or the village, and I grew up right next to it. I never would have thought that about that area.
In the town of Austin, and
which is amazing.
I sort of disagree with that assessment, though. I don't think that they're going beyond the four corners of the agreement. The agreement does say an analysis of zoning that is accepted by HUD.
But they're saying
they haven't produced that yet.
But they're not allowing New Yorkers to move into the housing, not allowing the housing to be of a certain size so people can actually live there and work and have it near public transportation.
That's what's not. But I just want to ask a quick question of the majority leader before she leaves. Just between us here at the table, when Mr. Astorino will claim during this campaign, he's already doing it in his video. Yeah. Again, we give him credit. He's smooth, articulate, good-looking. David Paterson says one day he will be governor of this state, just not now. But when Mr. Astorino says that he plays well with Democrats, between us, your response?
Well, I wouldn't give him high points for that, frankly. I think that I would not. I think that he has. I think that the Republicans and Democrats on the county board play pretty well with each other. We hash our differences out and usually are able to come to a consensus. I think that he takes a very strong stand. He is someone who really believes in the strong leader model, which a lot of chief electeds do, and he doesn't really. He's not that interested in some of the concerns that come up from the County Board of Legislators, and we've seen that on a number of issues. And frankly, the thing that I would criticize the most about the county executive is that he hasn't really been able to do the business of governing in the way that we really need in the county of Westchester. A lot of things are falling by the wayside, and that's going to be a price that we're going to pay in the future years.
As Phil said, though, I would just point out, this is what I would call leadership, and I've always said this on air and everywhere else. Leadership is what the voters want. They want you to stand up on an issue and lead.
That's why I think Cuomo's going to win.
What do you call leadership?
What he's doing with
exactly why I
HUD.
think Cuomo's
What
gonna
he's
win.
doing for this county on HUD is a leadership issue, and Rob went the right
But do
way
you
and
really
led.
think what he's doing on HUD is going to play with a broad, diverse audience statewide? It may play to the far right of his
No,
base,
yeah,
but
but
people
he's
are
running to be
voting
the
for him
governor
anyway.
of
He had
New York State.
but he had the reverend and the minority communities behind him on this issue.
Right, he had black leaders
On the
and
HUD
a
issue.
small
On
contest.
the HUD
Try
issue.
taking that
On the
statewide.
HUD
Only
issue,
a
he
few.
had that.
All right. Only a few. Only a few.
Last question before we move on. One of the modern strategies that we've seen in politics lately is find your opponent's strength and try to turn it into a weakness. That's Karl Rove's playbook from the elections with George W. Bush. I want to go around the table and just get your thoughts. Is Astorino's record in Westchester an asset or a detriment in this election? Does it work for him or against him?
I think that he runs a risk in some of the statements that he's made that are a little hyperbolic in his announcement video and that he says to the press, because I think if you look deeper, you're going to see some issues with some of the things that he has said.
Obi?
It's a plus. Lower taxes, lower spending, and he's led on many issues.
Oh, I was expecting you to filibuster and take longer with me.
Definitely an asset to be the governor of this state one day, but it is not going to be in 2014.
Phil?
I think it's an asset. I think just bouncing off what Dominic says real fast. If he gets like 45% of the vote, he's in effect won, in a way, because
Agreed.
that'll smooth the
Which
way
is what he
for
did
the
in
next.
2005 when he ran for
Exactly.
county executive as
Exactly.
well.
Now that's the question. Will he get that close?
All right, Westchester County Legislator and
Right.
Majority Leader Catherine Borgia, thank you so much. Really
Happy to be
appreciate it.
here. Absolutely.
Up next, we are going to totally switch gears for Talk of the Table. An 18-year-old in New Jersey wants a divorce from mom and dad and wants them to pay her in the process. A couple finds buried treasure in their backyard, so should they have to give it back or pay taxes on it? And they don't call them whole paycheck for nothing. They post all of their employees' salaries. Would you want that out there where you work? We're going to have a little fun on RFL, or at least die trying next.